Hello friends, my name is NAVIN. I'm speaking to you from India, state Maharashtra, district Pune, and a small town known as Vanur. Today we are going to hear the biblical history of Israel. References to the city of Jerusalem appears throughout the entire Tanakh and often incorrectly referred to as the Old Testament. Through the ages it has been called by many names like Salem, Mount Moriah, Adonai, Ura, Jebus, Jerusalem, Zion, the city of David, and Ariel, which means the Lion of God. Yahweh has declared that this is the place where He will establish His name and will dwell there forever. Jerusalem is a city rich in history, tradition, and culture. It's also one of the main focal points of the United Nations and the world. The aspect of prophecy will not be addressed as this is not a part of the literal history of Jerusalem. To understand the periods of time, all dates are taken from known historical events except in the time of Abraham. The scriptural history of Jerusalem begins around 2110 BC after Abraham defeated king of Elam and the kings with him and rescued his nephew Lot. The king of the king of Sodom went to meet Abraham in the valley of Shaveh, which means the valley of kings. There the king of Melech Tzedek of Salem brought bread and wine to Abraham and blessed him. Several years later, following a command from Yahweh, Abraham took Isaac, his only son, by his wife Sarah to Mount Moriah in order to offer him a sacrifice to Yahweh. As he was about to kill Isaac, Yahweh intervened and supernaturally provided a sacrifice in the place of Isaac. Abraham called that place Yahweh will see, of which it is said, on the mount of Yahweh it will be seen. This is usually improperly interpreted as the Lord will provide or the Lord who provides, since Yahweh provided a sacrifice in place of Isaac. However, there is actually two different statements there which most people generally overlook, and they each say something a bit different. By this we can see that Yahweh had already chosen Jerusalem as a place where He would establish His dwelling place. Around 1405 BC, the son of Judah fought against Jerusalem and captured it. Most people think Jerusalem is located within the boundaries of the tribe of Judah, but it is on the dividing line between Judah and Benjamin, on Benjamin's side. It is said that the sons of Benjamin could not drive out the Jebusites, so they lived together. King David conquered Jerusalem by defeating the Jebusites in 105 BC. It is interesting to note that in the middle of the war with the Philistines, David, upon being anointed king of Israel, turned to Jerusalem in order to take the city as capital of his kingdom. He ignored the Philistines until Jerusalem was secured and established. He reigned there 33 years and built Jerusalem into a great city. David desired to bring the Ark of God into Jerusalem. His first attempt, however, was a disaster. It was not transported according to Torah and, as a result, cost the life of one of David's men. Eventually, David did bring the Ark into Jerusalem using the method set forth by God. David wanted to build a house for Yahweh, But Yahweh told him that he would establish for David a house, a throne, and a kingdom forever. But because of the blood on David's hand, Yahweh did not allow him to build the house. David, however, did not make preparation. David, however, did make preparations for his son Solomon to build it. The adversary maneuvered David into taking a census of Israel. This would put David's trust in the size of his army rather than Yahweh. Even Job recognized this and tried to dissuade David from taking the census. Nevertheless, David prevailed and the census was taken. Yahweh was displeased and gave David a choice in his punishment: 3 years of famine, 3 months of attacks by the enemies, and 3 days of pestilence in Israel. David, not wanting to feel the ruthlessness of man, told Yahweh he wanted to fall into his hands. So Yahweh sent pestilence on Israel and 70,000 men died. Yahweh then sent a messenger to destroy Jerusalem. When the messenger was standing over the threshing floor of Ornan, the Jebusite, with his sword lifted to destroy Jerusalem, Yahweh stopped him. David as well as Ornan saw the messengers of Yahweh standing between heaven and earth with his sword drawn over Jerusalem. David asked Yahweh to stop his wrath against Israel, as it was he who ordered the census, not the people of the Israel. The messengers of Yahweh told David through the prophet Gad to build an altar to Yahweh on the threshing floor of Ornan. David brought the threshing floor from Ornan and built an altar on it. As the messenger of Yahweh put his sword back into his sheath, David offered sacrifice to Yahweh on the altar. He then offered a burnt offering as well as peace offerings. These were acceptable to Yahweh, and he sent fire from heaven and consumed the burnt offering. David declared that here will be the house of Yahweh, and here the altar of the burnt offerings of Israel. The threshing floor of Ornan is located in the same place where Abraham took Isaac to be sacrificed, which is Mount Moriah. Many people today believe that it is the same rock which sits under the dome of the rock on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. After David's death, Solomon began to build a house for the name of Yahweh. It took 7 years and 183,300 men to build it. It measured nearly 90 feet in length, 30 feet in width, and 45 feet in height. The Holy of Holies occupied 1/3 of the interior space, and the holy place 2/3. The complete details are described in 1 Kings chapter 6 and 7. When it was completed, the glory of Yahweh filled the temple. However, because Solomon went after the other gods due to the influence of his pagan wives, Yahweh turned his anger against Solomon's kingdom, tearing it into 2 smaller kingdoms. The land of Israel was divided into 2 kingdoms after Solomon's death. The kingdom of Israel was in the north, while Judah was in the south. Jerusalem was the capital of Judah, the southern kingdom. It would end up being ruled by a succession of 20 kings from 979 BC to 586 BC. Their reigns lasted from as short as 3 months. Jehoahaz and Jehoiakim, to as long as 55 years. The bleak history of the decline of Judah is told in 1 Kings chapter 12 verse 1 to 2, to 2 Kings chapter 25 verse 30, and 2 Chronicles chapter 10 verse 1 to 36 and verse 21. Eventually, Jerusalem was destroyed by King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon in 586 BC. The city as well as the temple was completely leveled, and the articles of the temple and its treasures were carried off to Babylon. The inhabitants that were not killed were also taken to Babylon. Jerusalem was to lie desolate for 70 years in order that the land might enjoy its Sabbath. In 539 BC, Cyrus, king of Persia, issued a proclamation to rebuild the house of the Lord in Jerusalem. People returned to Jerusalem and Judah to help rebuild the temple, not including male and female servants and the singers. All gave according to their ability in order to finance the work. In the first year, in the 7th month, Jeshua and Zerubbabel led a group to build the altar in order to offer sacrifice in accordance with Torah. During this time, they celebrated Sukkot, which is Feast of Tabernacles, and the other festival of Yahweh. All gatherings, all the materials, they began the work on the temple in the second year, in the 2nd month. It was finally completed in 516 BC on the 3rd day of the 12th month, a total of 23 years. 71 years later, 445 BC, Nehemiah heard of the condition of Jerusalem. He lived in Susa and was the cup-bearer of King Artaxerxes. Nehemiah asked King Artaxerxes to allow him to return to rebuild the city. The king granted his request and Nehemiah set out for Jerusalem. The account of the rebuilding along with details regarding the opposition to the work is given in the book of Nehemiah. This is all that is given in the history of the Jerusalem according to the Hebrew scriptures. The conclusion of today's hearing is, it is plain to see that Jerusalem has played and will continue to play an important part in Yahweh's deliverance of the earth. It is plain enough that we should seek His guidance and direction concerning this His holy city and our involvement in it. May God bless you and help you to know more about Jerusalem and our what is our involvement in knowing about Jerusalem. What are we supposed to do for Jerusalem? Let us continue to pray for the peace of Jerusalem.